Welcome back to the Beyond the Buckets. I am happy to bring on all the way from Alberta, Canada, the head women's basketball coach at Red Deer College. Mandy Botham, welcome to the program.
Hi, Chris. Thanks very much for having me.
Definitely. Well, let's jump right into it. Now, give me a 3-minute backstory on you. You grew up in British Columbia or British Canada, and I want to know more about your experience.
Yeah, so I grew up in Prince George, British Columbia, and we went to a really small high school. My grade 11 year, I was the only girl that wanted to play basketball, so I actually ended up trying out and made the senior boys team that year. And I think that was one of the best experiences I could have had as a youth because, you know, when I excelled as a female athlete competing against boys my age, I was very average. So when I went into my senior year, it really helped me. I played the game a lot more physical. I had a lot more confidence. Sure. And then I was fortunate to go to Grand Prairie Regional College, which is Northern Alberta, on a basketball scholarship. And so I played 2 seasons there, and then I had a career-ending knee injury, unfortunately, that cut my playing days short.
Sure.
But my first year there, we went undefeated in the regular season, undefeated in playoffs, and then we got bronze medal at the Canadian National Championship. So that was a pretty incredible experience.
Definitely. And
how
many universities are competing for the championships?
At that point we had 10 teams, one from each of the provinces in Canada, none from the territories, but you had to win your provincial league, which would be like a state league for you guys to go to the national championship.
Wow. And how many universities that are playing college basketball in Canada?
We have our college system that we play in, and then there's a league up, which is the university system, the U Sport League. Yep. And we have in the college league, I want to say about 200 colleges across Canada that partake in that. And U Sport would probably be around 20, 30.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
And so after the knee injury, what happens next?
Yeah, I went back home, settled down, got married, had 2 daughters, and as they started to get a little bit older, we were always watching basketball and shooting hoops in the driveway. Yeah. So inevitably they wanted to play, and I slowly got kind of back into coaching my kids, and it really just reignited that passion for me. And I realized that was a huge part of my life that I was really missing. And so, I started coaching out youth basketball and then moved up to junior high and senior high. And I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to be an assistant coach at the University of Northern British Columbia for a couple of years. And that led to me being the head coach of provincial teams in British Columbia. And I did a little bit of work with Canada Basketball at the Center for Performance in Vancouver and kept chipping away at it. And then I was really fortunate in 2017. I was hired as the head women's coach at Grand Prairie Regional College, which is where I played. So it was a very cool homecoming to get to go back and coach the team that I played for.
For sure.
I did 2 seasons there, and then the opportunity came up for me to move to Red Deer and take the head coaching job here. And I thought it would be a really good my career. So I was getting ready to start my 2nd season here in Red Deer.
It's amazing where the game of basketball can take you. It introduced us, and we're a country away from each other, and it's just beautiful the things that take place, the journeys that you go on, and it sounds like you've had a great journey, and you've been able to involve your family and got you to where you're at now as the head coach of Red Deer. So tell me a little bit more about the Canadian uprising in the basketball world internationally. You know, you look at Steve Nash, who's obviously from Canada, and he just got the Brooklyn Nets head coaching job. Jamal Murray's from Canada, and he is just dominating right now. And there's so many women in the WNBA now that are just excelling. So tell me about this uprising, probably in the last 20 years, of Canadian athletes excelling in basketball.
Yeah, it's been really exciting to watch. You know, when there used to be a time where we'd have one or two guys, and then in the NBA, Steve Nash was pretty much the only one that most people had heard of, and it was quite rare for us to have a Canadian in the WNBA. But Canada basketball, phenomenal job with the leadership, right from the top downward, the head coaches of all of the national teams, and the strong player development focus that they have. And they really put a solid plan in place that included high level of coaching, so they can try and surround more players with, you know, excellent coaching, even from a young age. So they learn the fundamental skills, they learn basketball IQ piece, and, you know, the things that outside of basketball that you need to have to be successful, like strength and conditioning, nutritioning, recovery. And yeah, they put it all together, and we started to see a little bit of success, you know, with Andrew Wiggins and Tristan Thompson. And yeah, it's been exciting to watch. And on the women's side now, we've had some of the members of our senior women's national team successfully playing in WNBA and making a real impact.
For sure. Tell me how Canadian basketball works, because you talked about they're starting at the grassroots and they're giving high quality coaching at a young age. I know for the United States, and this will probably lead into my next question, but I know kind of how it all works, no matter if you're in California or you're in New York. You start playing basketball at a young age. Usually there may be a volunteer. It's hardly ever a paid coach that is put in a position to coach young kids. So already they're getting somebody that may not be knowledgeable, or just, you know, they have passion for helping the kids out, but they may not actually be able to develop a jump shot or develop a way to a chest pass or a bounce pass or the fundamentals defensively. You know, the man zone talk in the younger youth ages in our country is completely all over the place. And so then you go from youth basketball, whether it be CYO or YMCA, and then you work your way up. You get into middle school. At that time, a lot of the kids start to play club basketball, which they call AAU here. And then from the AAU circuit, they go to their high school. Depending on what high school they go to, you could be at a higher or lower level. A lot of the private schools in our area where I coach usually get the upper echelon of talent, but in other places, the public schools, like in Texas, the public schools are the kings and queens. And then, you know, you get an opportunity to go to college and, you know, Division 1, 2, 3, or NAIA. And then, you know, hopefully you transfer on to the professional ranks, and that could be overseas or NBA or G League now. So that's kind of how it works here. Is it different from, you know, from where you guys are at?
Yeah, it is a little bit different. They typically start playing basketball around, it varies across the country, but I would say the average age is around 8 where they get introduced. And a lot of the times they do have, you know, a parent coach, because if they don't coach, you know, their kid won't be able to play. But Canada basketball has brought in, you know, some really requirements and support for new coaches. So they offer them a lot of the coach education for free when you're starting, because they want to ensure that, you know, one, the kids are safe, 2, that they're having fun, and
Sure.
3, that they have a good experience where they're learning things and want to continue on with basketball.
That's a key point. I love it.
So from those really early beginnings, then they start playing in elementary school, usually around age 10, play like grade 5, 6, and 7. Typically it's a teacher volunteering or a parent to coach. And then if the kids like it, they can start getting into club in some areas as young as U10. They have teams.
Yep.
But I feel like Canada's been a little bit slower than the United States to get those younger kids into basketball in the club circuit.
Sure.
And then when we go in high school, usually the coaching on those teams is, they've had a little bit more experience on things.
Right.
They're getting some good coaching, and they can try out for our provincial teams, which is kind of the gateway into the national talent identification program. The provincial bodies like Basketball BC, Basketball Alberta will identify kids that have potential to possibly play, on the national team for Canada. And then those kids get invited to ID camps for the national teams. And then, all the college and university coaches in Canada are kind of vying for those kids.
Sure.
But the very upper level elite players are still going to the States and playing NC1 because it is just a completely higher caliber of basketball than we have in Canada. And those who are good enough to go, I mean, that's where they want to go. That's going to help them take that next step, whether it's playing pro over in Europe or the WNBA for women, or like you said, the G League, hopefully the NBA, playing pro overseas. And even in Canada, we have a pro league in the summer.
Right. Yeah. And for people that, and I do, before the call we jumped on, asked how many, recruits do you get from the States? But a lot of kids in the States don't realize that this is a worldwide thing now. St. Mary's, which isn't too far from here, the majority of their kids are international kids, and they have this pipeline from Australia, and these kids continue to keep coming in. Their coach, Randy Bennett, is very high on that. And the Canadian pipeline is getting stronger and stronger with Andrew Wiggins, who plays for the Warriors, and like I said, Jamal Murray, who went to Kentucky. These players are really, really good, and they're becoming so skilled at a young age. And I'm just so fascinated by how fast Canadian basketball is catching up. There's so many good players, and it's just amazing.
Mm-hmm. It's exciting to watch. We're getting more and more competitive. You can see year after year, and it's nice. It helps when the caliber of the opponents gets higher, and it just elevates the game for everyone.
Right. Let's talk about coaches being coached. You are a certified mentor coach. I don't know exactly what that means, but you can give me a definition of it. And I want to know, do all coaches need to be certified? Is there a certification that, the Canadian national team is saying everybody needs to have? I just think that a governing body, I think USA Basketball tries to do some stuff like that, but it's all online. We're not really unless you really investigate and you're thirsting for that knowledge, you're not going to get it here in the US. But is that a mandate by, the powers that be in Canada?
Yeah, that comes directly from Canada Basketball, and they work with the National Coaching Certification Program in Canada. We just call it the NCCP. And then we have the Coaching Association of Canada, and collaboratively, they designed a program. I want to say about 15 years ago, they did a big overhaul, and then they just did another one about 7 years ago. And they brought down mandates. So to coach at a certain level, even in youth basketball, certainly into college, university, the provincial teams or the national teams, you have to have a certain level of your NCCP certification. And it's a really in-depth process. It can be a little overwhelming when you're starting, but I've learned to just embrace it. It's part of my coaching journey, and they really do a phenomenal job. They bring presenters in from all over Canada. Of course, pre-COVID, we would do the courses. We had the option of doing them online, but I prefer to go and attend in person. So it would be, kind of over a weekend, a combination of classroom sessions and being in the gym. We would watch film. We had assignments to do. And then once you get to the end of each level, there's kind of like a big project that you have have to do. You have to put it there and submit some film of yourself coaching in practice and in the games with your practice plans, your game plans. It's pretty depth.
Wow, I really love that. I mean, the USA basketball is trying. They're doing things, but it's all online. I don't have to submit anything. Most of the people that are on there can just click, 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 take the test. And, you know, anybody that has any sort of intellect could take the test without even looking at it. And you can get as many chances as you need to get, you know, your 75 or 80%
wow.
right. But I would much rather love to collaborate, be in an environment where there's so many other coaches. You're going to learn stuff there. You're going to make connections there. And then you're ultimately going to be better because you went through that experience. No, nobody wants to spend a whole weekend somewhere, you know, doing this. But I do think it weeds out some of the coaches that may not have what it takes to be a good coach if you're not willing to do that. In AAU, for instance, you can coach against somebody that has no type of credentials at all. If they just put together a team, they can go and coach as long as they, you know, pass their background check and get an AAU card. But some of them, you don't even need that. Those are just for the sponsored AAU tournaments, like local tournaments. You don't need that. Anybody can coach. Like it could be a parent, it can be anybody. And I just think that is where the United States is a little bit behind when you talk about growing the game. And at the highest level, you don't, you know, everybody is obviously doing what they're good at and what they're capable of. But that's why Canada's catching up so much, because they're doing it at the grassroots. And now when the United States has skip some of those steps and now they get the kid when they're 15 or 16 that is super athletic, well, you already know that's, you know, that's what most people are looking for. But if you're getting those fundamentals at a young age, it's a really beneficial thing.
Yeah, it's been really cool to be a part of that process. And like you say, the collaboration and networking with other coaches from all across the country, it's so valuable, because I find I walk away from those weekends just, you know, re-inspired and ignited because I've had so many great conversations and shared ideas with people.
Right. So this is your 4th year. You guys just started practice this week. Oh my gosh, how does that feel? And you know, how excited are you? And most importantly, the kids.
Yeah, we are so excited. We were joking the night before that it felt like Christmas Eve because it had been 199 days since we'd been in the gym together, and we just couldn't wait to get back in. Yeah, it was astounding that it had been that long.
What was it like for you when you first started?
Like this year when I first started?
No, coming in 4 years ago.
Yeah, I was pretty green. I had a lot to learn. And my first year, I would say I learned a lot of lessons the hard way, as we tend to do. But, you know, it forced me way out of my comfort zone. And, you know, I really increased and I would say accelerated my learning on my own pace, you know, watching other people's film and taking clinics online, reading books, connecting with people. So I was trying to bridge that gap between, you know, my team and the other teams in the league as quickly as possible. So looking back now that I'm in year 4, yeah, I definitely had a lot to learn. It was a tough year.
What were some of the first initial things that you did, but as soon as you got the job and were trying to figure out what you wanted to do and how you wanted to do it?
The first thing I did was connect with all of the athletes individually, because I know that's a really stressful time when you've been recruited by another coach and all of a sudden there's a coaching change, and you know, you wonder if you fit in, where you fit in, what does this new coach expect. So I put a lot of time into having, you know, phone calls or FaceTimes with all the athletes and getting their feedback too on where they felt the program was, what they felt we were doing a good job of, what needed to improve. And it became clear pretty early on that, you know, for my standard, we needed to change some of the culture of the program.
Right. And now that you've been there for 3 years, how did the first 3 years go? And as far as success wise? Are you where you thought you would be when you first started and things like that?
You know, I'm a extremely competitive person, as most coaches are, and former athletes. So uh, until we win a national championship, I don't think I'll ever be satisfied with where we are. But I am pleased that year over year we've had significant improvements in our record, in some key stats, and tracking our player development. That those things have improved. We're retaining players. The TA is a lot higher than it was before. We're more involved in our community and giving back. And so overall, I'm pleased with the direction we're going in. But yeah, until we get that banner, I won't be ultimately happy.
For sure. If you had three things that you would say are staples of your program as far as like what the players do on the court, you know, whether that be physicality or whether that be we're a great rebounding team, or the three things that you emphasize the most, it could be offense or defense.
Yeah, we are we are relentless defenders. We're not always the best defenders, but teams don't enjoy playing us because we're so consistent and pressure. And you know, that makes me happy when they see our name on the schedule and they think, oh, we got to play those guys again. We really have a fast-paced style. We like to press, we like to run, score, and transition. And so that's been cool because most players, that's the kind of basketball they want to play. So it's been a great recruiting tool to bring kids in.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the third one, it's kind of a combination of two, but playing a really physical game and being a strong rebounding team is so important to me. And
Mm-hmm.
last year, we led our conference in almost all of the rebounding categories. So our tallest player was 5'10", so we're a really small team. So
Mm-hmm.
I was really happy with that.
Wow. And what emphasis do you guys have on shooting the basketball?
Yeah, I like to, when I recruit athletes into my program, I really like to try and develop them as a universal player. So, you know, just because you're 6 feet tall doesn't mean I don't expect you to be able to, like, you need to bring the ball up in transition, or you need to be able to shoot the three or beat someone off the dribble when you're playing outside. Um, so I like to kind of go through that, and then we have kind of our shot selection philosophy, which changes year to year depending on the personnel and the offenses that we run. But I would say I'm more a pro pro shooting team, because I found that the female athletes at the level that I coach tend to be reluctant, and you know, they want to make their teammates happy. They like to pass the ball and the other people have success, but they all need to be able to score. So there's not very many times when I'll, you know, get mad at them for a bad shot.
Right. And are you constantly developing? Like if you've got a 2-hour practice, how much time are you spend on skill development and shooting specifically?
Yeah, I would say we only get an hour and a half practice a day
Mhm.
here, but I try to do 15 minutes of individual skill work in that practice, and then we do another 15 minutes of shooting. But I'm a big fan of the combination drills, so if we can work on a couple things in one drill and get that done to leave time for the team concepts, then I like to do that.
Right. Let's talk practice for a quick second. Chris Oliver, who does the basketball podcast on basketball immersion. He's from Canada as well. Such a great basketball
Yeah.
mind. He talks block
Yes.
practice versus the game's approach. Which more do you lean towards?
Yeah, I definitely lean towards the games approach and the random practice. That was actually something I learned through the coaching certification program,
Mhm.
because when I was first starting out as a young coach, I coached the way that I was coached because that was all I knew. And once I started going to the courses and learning, that's not the effective way to coach kids these days. So I had to change a lot of what I was doing. but I enjoy the small-sided games approach because it's so great. It'll let me really hone in if there's one certain skill or an action that I really want us to emphasize. We can do it that way, but we can also work on team concepts. And as far as loading drills, it just fits really nicely. You know, we can start with a small one, focusing on, you know, like a ball screen read, and then, you know, expand it out until we're 5-on-5. And my players have enjoyed that. Like the feedback we've had is that, you know, it just feels like a more logical progression. They understand why we're doing these drills. And so they've been more engaged too, instead of just, you know, assuming it's a random drill coach threw into practice.
For sure. Well, it makes sense. I mean, why would we practice things that we're not going to be good at? You know, if you are in sales, the best way to do it is to go out there and fail a bunch of times and figure out how to actually sell this product. If you're running a marathon, what do you have to do? You have to run a whole bunch so you're prepared to actually do it. You're not just going to be able to go out there. Your body's going to be shocked. And, you know, I was the same way. You know, I had some really great coaches growing up, and my two high school coaches, one played in the NBA, one played professionally in Division I. But
Wow.
I learned so much from them. But we would do shell drill for 45 minutes, and there would never be a time where, and I do get it that, you know, you kind of got to go over some stuff like that. But we would do layups for 15 minutes, and all of these things that don't actually translate to the actual game, but playing the game in a one-on-one to a 5-on-5 is just continuously playing and learning, and you get to mess up a lot more in that approach. And I spent all summer last year listening to Chris's stuff and his podcast and all the stuff that he shares online, and it just changed my approach so much.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. I've been following his stuff for a couple of years now, and it's had a big influence on my coaching philosophy and the way I structure our, you know, our yearly training plan. So he's a great resource and a great basketball mind.
Right. He recently talked about one of his recent podcasts, how, you know, you want your athletes, or you want to prime them to be ready for a game. So the most important part is that they are physically ready to play their absolute best when it's a game day. And the conundrum with basketball is every game is so important. But if you take out some of those things and you're resting in the right areas, then you're able to, you know, I forget the term they call it, you may know it, but I think it's provisional rest or provisional something, where they are focused on, all right, recovery, build up, and be ready to play.
Yeah. And that's a part of the game in the past that's been really overlooked, is the impact that, you know, stretching and rolling, rehydrating, a good night's sleep, proper food, that really has an effect on athletes.
For sure. You talked briefly about it, but culture in your program is paramount. And tell me about how you've created the culture that you've wanted. What is your culture? How do you, are there ways that you guys are defining it, or is the team defining it? Whatever direction you want to go on with that.
Yeah, culture is really the piece about my college coaching role that I'm the most excited about, and that I feel is the biggest, most important piece. Because in women's basketball, if you don't have that good chemistry, things are going to break down in the biggest moments, and, you know, that's just so frustrating. So that's been an ongoing challenge for me, and caused me to learn a lot. But at the root of it, I feel that it comes to communication, you know, between coach and athlete, athlete to athlete, and being able to have those tough conversations in a respectful way, have the person receiving that feedback to have an open mind and realize that, you know, within these walls, anyone in our program, we all have the same goal. We want to win, we want to get better. So we're not giving you this feedback to be negative or upset you. We want you to be better. And it's been a challenge to get the athletes, especially some of the young ones or the ones who are typically shy, to hold a teammate accountable or speak up when they feel that someone's not working hard or someone's attitude is crappy today. We do a lot of team building things outside of basketball to try and build those personal relationships and help them get to know each other outside of basketball. And this year I'm bringing in something new with our practice debriefs, and it gives people the chance to, usually I speak and then I kind of open up the floor to anyone. They have the opportunity to speak, and then they can choose to agree with what someone said, build on it, challenge that teammate that they don't agree, and they can have a discussion, or dig deeper, like they need more information. And I found that has led to some really powerful conversation when athletes are feeling like, I let the team down, I did terrible in that drill, or we had to run because I missed this free throw. And they'll say that about themselves, and a teammate will immediately challenge them and say, I don't agree with that. You were focused. You got your shots up this week. So you missed this one shot. You didn't let the team down. And it's been really cool to just kind of sit back and watch them build those relationships.
Yeah, we are. I've just learned with so much time to reflect or seek other knowledge during this time that I haven't been coaching. And our thoughts are key. Our thoughts are control our actions, and our actions and our feelings and all of that. And it just makes a whole lot of sense. The UCLA women's coach, Corey Close, who was actually on Chris's podcast recently, talks about when she talks to coaches, she might say, hey, coach, how was your season? They always say one of two things. Oh, we had a great year. Our team was so mentally tough. We had a lot of leaders. Our leadership was terrific. Or vice versa. Oh, we didn't have any leaders. Our kids weren't mentally tough, and we had a bad year. Well, those two things, if you're not coaching it or not thinking about it, to your points of, being transparent and having tough conversations, if you're not equipping the kids to understand what that actually means, we're doing a disservice. And it's ultimately on us if our team isn't mentally tough, because it's not just in you, it can be learned. Okay, a lot of people do have that ingrained in them, whether that be from parenting or the background that they grew up in. But some people can learn it and if it's our job to make sure that we know how to teach it. And so training the brain to be mentally tough and just alter our thoughts to more positive things, because we're in a negative sport. Steph Curry shoots 40% from three, and he's missing the other six the other six. Yeah. He's taking 10. So I just love the fact that you're taking those moments after practice to debrief with your team and let them talk, because so many times as coaches we talk too much. We really do. And
yes,
they need to figure it out sometimes on their own. We can't just provide them the answers, because guess what? On the court, they have to come up with solutions to problems that we can't fix for them.
Yes. And it builds into my bigger coaching philosophy, in the sense that, yes, I'm a coach and my job is to teach them basketball, but if a young woman's been in my program, whether it's 1 year or 5 years in Canada, and they come out the same person they were when they started, then I've failed them. I've done them a disservice, because it's not just basketball. It's using basketball to teach life lessons and give them opportunities because of basketball.
Right. And you talked about it earlier, the universal player, but that's on and off the court.
Yes, absolutely. Even in my recruiting, I look for athletes who are committed to their studies and respectful to their parents, to their siblings, to the referees, not entitled, not afraid to do the dirty work. They don't think anything is, you know, beneath them, whether that's sweeping the gym or cleaning up equipment. And I like to lead by example in that sense, because, you know, I don't want to ask them to do things that they don't see me doing as well. I have to be accountable to them and to myself. So it's a big part of, you know, that culture piece. It actually goes into every decision that I make my program. There's some aspect of our culture in there.
How much help do you have with regards to assisting coaches or administrative stuff? Do you have to create all the schedules? I just don't know what it's like for a Canadian college basketball coach.
Yeah, we have some administrative staff within athletics. We're very fortunate. So they book all of our travel arrangements, take care of meal money. They schedule our practices. It's pretty great. All I really have to do is show up and coach, which is really nice.
Do you have assistant coaches as well?
Yeah, I have two assistant coaches currently. They're both former players, and one of them has been out of playing for 2 years now. So it's nice to have her on my staff because, of course, the athletes really connect with her because they're close in age. And, you know, she's a good buffer for some of those conversations that they might feel more comfortable talking to her about as opposed to me. And then she can bring me that info and we go from there. And then my other assistant coach played university basketball in Alberta as well. So she is local to the area. She's been here for a long time. So she's been helpful to me, only being in Red Deer now for just over a year, helping me build local high school coaches, the club coaches, things like that.
For sure. I visited Canada one time. I went to Toronto, had a beautiful time with my wife, and we just had a blast. We really liked it. It felt just like America. It was actually felt a little bit safer. I would say Toronto is more of a safer, cleaner New York with just as good as food.
Wow,
And
that's great.
we really enjoyed the poutine. So that was we were stayed at the Fairmont, and they had this.
Oh yeah.
They had this farmers market for the whole week that we were there, right across the way. And we found this poutine place, and we really ate it every day. They had the best gravy, the crisp fries. It was absolutely amazing.
Oh.
Luckily, we walked so much around the city that, you know, we could work those calories off. But it was an amazing place.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Toronto's a great city. Lots of action. And of course, our Raptors are there, so it's always fun to watch them as well.
Definitely. And so I'm curious to see what the political climate is up there, specifically in regards to racial injustice in the United States. It's been so deep rooted, and, you know, I've grown up kind of in a bubble in the Bay Area, which it has its racism as well, but not as much as other parts of the country. So I'm curious to see what it's been like up there with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and, you know, just does the racial inequality feel the same way that it does here because it's not America? I don't know. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, we definitely do have racism here in Canada. Unfortunately, our Indigenous people have suffered a lot of racism, Black Canadians as well. And because of being so involved in basketball, you know, and so passionate about it, it's something that I've felt very strongly about my whole life. And I'm very much, you know, pro for people regardless of color or religion or sexual identity. And that's also a big part of the team culture in our team, but also just me as a person outside of coaching. And it's been really interesting. It sparked some phenomenal discussions within our team. We have young women of a variety of ethnicities on our team, and they were willing to share their stories of personal experiences with racism in Canada. And it was really devastating to listen to, you know, an 18-year-old girl talk about the horrible racism she's faced in her life. And, you know, it brought all of us to tears. And it was something that we decided that, you know, as COVID, we have all this extra time on our hands. We need to do a better job as role models in our community to just say that this is acceptable and to call people out when we see them or hear them being racist. And so that's been a part of trying to empower my young athletes to say, you know, it's okay for you to stand up and call someone out when they're being racist, whether it's to you, to someone else, that we won't tolerate it. And we're working on putting a project together just to spread awareness and education and just promote the racial equality in Canada. So it's sad to see all of the horrible stories and the injustices, but it really made me feel compelled to take action and make a big stand on it and hopefully educate some people and bring positive change.
Wow, I applaud you for you know, taking that stance and standing with, you know, with everybody, including myself, and trying to change things. You know, I've got two young kids, and I don't want them to grow up in the same world that I've grown up in. And I know my
Yeah,
mother and my grandparents feel the same way. But I do think that all of this stuff is for a reason. I do think it has been necessary to bring it to light.
mm-hmm.
The only way you can get stronger is if you're broken down. And, you know,
Yeah,
as a society in general, all across the world, there's so much division. We've been broken down for so long. A lot of different people, right? Not just Black people. But
yeah,
it's now time for everybody to come closer together. And because this has been a big impact, we're now being stretched in a different way. And I really do think we will see a lot more change moving forward.
yeah, I do too. And I think that, you know, the leaders in the basketball world, like both WNBA, NBA, they've really done a good job of using their platform to speak out and educate. And, you know, I just love seeing that because, you know, we are more than basketball players or basketball coaches. We can do more than just shut up and dribble. And it's really inspiring to see them use their platform to bring about change that way.
And the women, I believe they started first, but they were the first to walk out on the national anthem, or they didn't come out. And the women have been tremendous in this whole thing, and that's why I wanted to bring more women on the program like yourself that are doing it the right way. And I coach women's basketball, and I love it, and I think the game is
Yeah.
beautiful. It's relatively in our infancy as compared to the men's game, but we're so far ahead if you're
Yes.
talking about the sheer number of years. So I'm excited for the women's game. I'm so glad that you've come on, another powerful woman. I got two more things. One, top 5 Canadian people that you would like to have at a dinner party. So you could choose Justin Bieber if you wanted to, or Steve Nash, or anybody. But who are the top 5 Canadians? Or Alanis Morissette, is she Canadian as well?
She is,
Okay,
yeah.
my Canadian history is pretty good. Yeah,
That is pretty good.
so give me 5 individuals you can have outside of your family members that if you wanted to just have a nice dinner with some good company, who would they be?
Well, I'd have to say Steve Nash for sure.
Hmm.
Um, Lisa Tomaitis, who is the head coach of our senior women's national team.
Okay.
Um, I'd have to say Brian Adams because he's my favorite musician and he's Canadian as
Hmm.
well. Uh, Kia Nurse because I love the way that she plays and that she gives back to young women, and yeah, she's just pretty great. And then the fifth one, hmm, I would have to say, man, that's a tough question. I'd say Allison McNeil, who was a former coach of our senior women's Olympic team.
Wow. I was actually going to bring up Kia Nurse because it seems like the whole Yukon team is all littered across the WNBA from Sue Bird all the way to Kia and, and beyond. And the last one is,
go
ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say they've been really successful, that program, at both in the NCAA and the WNBA.
For sure. And then the last question I have for you is, if you had another powerful female coach to bring on or invite to this show, and I'll give you a disclaimer, if you say the name and you have to follow through with the connection, who would you say that needs to come on next for this show?
I would say Cheryl John Paul from Trinity Western University in Canada. She's a phenomenal coach, just an expert basketball mind. She's also, she was the first female Black head coach in Canadian basketball, and she's the current head coach of our U16 national team.
Oh, wow. Well, you got to connect Cheryl with me. And I was doing some research because I wanted to know how many Black coaches had won the NCAAs on the men's and women's. And there's only been 6 out of all of these players that have played. And a lot of them have been African-Americans. On the women's side, there's only been 2. And on the men's side, there's only been 4. Like, I can't even believe that is even the case. And so
I can't.
Yeah, it was amazing to me.
That's baffling. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm going to hold you to that. You got to get Cheryl on the program, but you were awesome. I really loved our conversation. We touched on a lot of different things, whether that be basketball or philosophies on, that you can use in life. And then of course, the landscape of our continent, right? So thank you so much for joining the program, Mandy, and I look forward to following you and your continued success.
Oh, thank you very much, Chris. It was great to be on the podcast. I really enjoyed it, so thank you for having me.
No problem.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond the Buckets podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and share the show with your friends. And until next time, take care.